this channel, but I also wanted to take this video as a way to talk to you about some, you know, slightly personal ailments, you could say. But let's just set up the board first. I'm using the bicycle Archangel deck, as you can see right there. So that is what we are using. Start in this corner. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Move those slightly this way. And 7. Now, what I want to talk to you today about is anxiety. I know that some of you watching, some of you may struggle with anxiety yourself, whether that's social or just general anxiety. But one of the reasons that I started watching ASMR videos back in the day was because of my own personal anxiety. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because recently I've decided, well, I guess not decided, but I've talked on this channel before about my history with theater and the movies that I used to make in high school, and I've sort of just realized that I've still got, you know, that passion and that desire to make something creative. I've always considered myself a very creative person, and I've just sort of thought, you know, with the way that the world is and how uncertain things have felt lately, that I might enjoy stepping back into that world. But in the process, I've discovered that it's much more difficult now than it was 7 years ago when I was making movies and stuff. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But it just sort of spawned into my head one day that I wanted to start making movies again. And I started reaching out to my old acquaintances, old friends, people I knew who were doing that kind of work. But it appears that a lot of people have sort of moved on from that, and I'm essentially starting from scratch all over again. And that has been very, very difficult for me, I think. Just because, you know, it used to be something that I just sort of had locked down, right? Like I just knew so many different people who were doing it. And, you know, I had all kinds of free time to make that kind of stuff. And, you know, it just hasn't really stayed that way, right? With COVID. With COVID happening, it really put a dent in things in that regard for me, where, you know, everyone was on lockdown. We couldn't go out and make the same kind of stuff that we were making, and so it just really, you know, delayed everything because COVID happened, you know, right after I graduated, right? January 2020, I graduated. In June of 2019, and you know, I thought to myself, all right, I'm just gonna work. I'm gonna save up some money and, you know, figure it out from there. the strangest thing happened, right, as Bo Burnham would say. And so I've just been really, really anxious about it, right? Because I don't even have a camera anymore, right? I have my cell phone, but that's not, there's stuff I can do, right? But it's not, it's not the same kind of thing that I'd want to be doing. If I have to do it, I have to do it. I get that. You make do with what you have, but I could rent some cameras, but that comes with its own little pros and cons, I guess we could say. But I just realized I can do this. But yeah, it's renting cameras and equipment that can really start to add up fast. Again, you have to hire actors, and I am broke. Okay, I don't make a lot of money in my day job. My day job, of course, being a freelance video editor, which, of course, is not the most well-paying thing in the world, but it's fun, right? It's a skill set that I know how to do, and sometimes I'll do. I did a music video once for a friend of mine a while back, and that was nice, but it's definitely different than the stuff I'm used to. So it's a learning curve, and I only started like 6 months ago doing this, because before that I was working in the United States Forest Service, which essentially no longer exists. So that was, I loved the Forest Service. I had a lot of fun working outdoors and that kind of thing. And, I wasn't like a ranger or anything. I was just a guy that was there, and, we'd go out and clear trails, and, I was essentially maintenance, That's essentially what I did. It wasn't exactly that by title, but I was essentially part of the maintenance group that would go out and just make sure that, the trailhead was clear, and, nobody had gone out and, strung up barbed wire or that kind of thing. But, I used to do that, and then, some things have changed here in the States that made that not necessarily a viable option, because I got laid off. And so I just figured, if the job market is as bad as it is, then, I may as well just try and get back into something that I actually want, to do. So I, started taking gigs as a video editor, and, just trying to work my way back in to the industry that I was once, so fond of. And I have so many great memories of, just running around with a camera, doing a bunch of, a lot of what we did was improv. Like, we made, an Office parody, and some mockumentary stuff, and, just a lot of messing around, really. But, it was a great time. I have a lot of really fond memories of doing that. And, there were a couple of festivals that I entered in, and one of them we actually did win. Not first place, but we won an award for something. I can't remember what it was, because I wasn't the director on that one. The one I directed didn't win anything. But I was the assistant director and production manager for a friend of mine, which essentially just means I ran around with all the heavy shit. Um, so, I would move the microphones and the lighting and, all that stuff, and I would rehearse with the actors and, just a bunch of junk, a bunch of menial labor that you have to do when you're making movies. But, I did all that, and that one actually won an award. I can't remember if it was like Best New Director or something. It was just one of those awards that, like, they kind of just hand out. It wasn't Best in Show or anything. We tried. Honest to God, we tried to win Best in Show one year, and that was a very humbling experience because we went up against some guys who I knew these guys that we were up against that eventually beat us, and they, I was really good friends with them for a time. But they put out a short about a drug deal gone wrong. This action short. It was about 12 minutes long, and it was very well done for a bunch of high schoolers. Very, very well done. But we did a horror short. Ours was a horror short. It was about 8 minutes. It was about a guy who goes into the woods. He's on a camping trip, and things around him just start sort of changing, right? He starts hearing things, and people are darting across the screen and whatnot, and just a fun little psych thriller kind of thing. And I really enjoyed it. It was a script that I wrote. I thought it was a really nice script. I still have it somewhere around on one of my hard drives or flash drives. Somewhere it exists. Unlike any of the films I ever made, what I should have done is upload my videos directly to YouTube and just have them as private on just, a dummy channel. But what I did was I uploaded them to Google Drive, and they were in there for so long I just didn't think much of it. And I went back to go look for them not too long ago because I was talking to a guy and I wanted to show him some of my work. Files were corrupted. Well, that's not great. Don't know how it happened. If it was a mistake on Google's end or my end or whatnot. But the files were corrupted. They were gone. Just did not work. And so I went into my email because I emailed. I put them on my Google Drive so I could email them to people. And I went to my email and I tried to see, maybe there's still something there. I've just noticed. I can move this right here onto this 9. Anyway, but I went to my email, and I was hoping that I might find something that I could use. And, they weren't in my email. I started asking some of the actors that I had in those shorts if, they had a copy, because I remember sending them to them. And just being like, hey, here's this film we worked so hard on, why not take a look, right? That kind of thing. And I emailed a bunch of people. I even emailed the festival that we went to. I emailed them and I said, hey, at this show at this time, we sent in this film. I was wondering if you still had a copy of it, and they said no. And that was heartbreaking to me, honestly. That was a terrible experience to be like, here's all this stuff that I worked on that's just not not around anymore, and that really sucked. So I essentially I'm working from zero, right? Like just complete back against the wall. I've got nothing of that life that I used to have. And that has been really, really stressful, right? Because it's like I should have just pursued it, right? Like when I graduated, I had no real clue what I wanted to do, and that was part of the whole, I'll take the year off, I'll save up some money, I'll retake the ACT, make sure I get as good a score as I possibly can, and whatnot, set myself up for the future. was just, I don't know what I want to do, but like, I don't have a lot of money, right? Like, I'm not from some, a very well-to-do, well-off kind of family, and I got a lot of siblings, right? And it's like paying for college for that many kids. I want to make it easier on my parents. I want to get a good scholarship if I can, that kind of thing. Um, and so it's just like, all right, I'll save up money, I'll prepare. And then COVID happened, and I just started working, right? I just started jumping around. I worked at a movie theater, McDonald's, these part-time, quote-unquote, starter jobs that everybody gets out of high school. So I just, started working right away, and sort of derailed myself from that, and I haven't touched a camera in God knows how long. It really has sort of stressed me out a little bit to think that I could have just followed that, and who knows where I would have gotten. Maybe I would have flamed out. Right? Maybe it wouldn't have worked, but I think I would have preferred that, honestly, to have had that experience than just the monotonous work every day kind of, situation that I've been in for the last 7 years now. But, who can say how things would have turned out? I think I'm out of moves here, so we'll just get everything back in order. And we will try again. Possibly. But yeah, I mean, that's what the source of my anxiety is. It's just the realization that I have to basically start over from fresh. And it's not like I'm in some kind of midlife crisis. I don't think, right? Like I'm in my 20s, right? It's not a big deal starting over, but at the same time, it's like I haven't had to start over in goddamn, like it's been such a long time. It's been such a long time since I've been in this position. And I don't know how to feel about it, right? Like, it's a feeling that's very unfamiliar to me. But, I don't know, like, I want it, right? It's something I want more than, anything, really. Like, I want to be back in creative spaces, and, I gotta get some stuff out there, I gotta find a medium and just make something. So we'll see how that goes. Wish your boy luck. But yeah, it's not like I haven't dealt with this kind of feeling before, right? Like I've been an anxious person for a long time. Not like generally, it doesn't necessarily prevent me from like I'm not socially anxious, right? Like I can talk to people just fine. It's not like that. It's just I think it's more like when I want to make something, that's when it starts to hit, right? Like when someone else is going to be perceiving my work, that's when I think I start to get a little jittery. But I know it works. It works very differently for different people, right? Like, even when I was an actor, when I was in theater, when I was young, I never really got stage fright, which is weird, because my mom made me take piano lessons for a year, and God, I hated piano. It just was not interesting to me at all. Didn't want to do it. And so, when I used to have to go to recitals, I just could not get on that stage. Couldn't do it. No idea why. Like, maybe it's just because I had no passion for it. But I, could not, for the life of me, get on that stage and play piano in front of, a couple hundred people. Just wasn't my thing. And my mom, I know, spent a fair amount of money on those piano lessons to try and, get me to, well, it was for all of my siblings. It was for all of us. She tried to get all of us to pick it up, but only my sister really had any kind of aptitude for it. But she didn't stick with it very long either. It just wasn't our destiny, I suppose, as kids. But in acting on the stage, I could do that no problem at all. I could get up there. I memorized my lines before anybody else. I would memorize other people's lines and remind them and walk them through their stuff, and that was just how I operated. Like, we would be doing rehearsals. We would be doing rehearsals for our play, and it would be like, week 2, week 3. It's like 2 months of rehearsal before the play even starts showing, and I'd go out there, and week 2, week 3, I'd know all my lines. I'd have it all ready to go, and I was just very quick about it. And, like, I wouldn't even need a script for most of our rehearsals that we were doing, because I would just pick it up right away. But yeah, it was just something that always, just always came naturally to me, and I never had any kind of anxiety for that. But for other things, like, for any of my writing, right, like at my high school, my English teacher had this thing where, like, if you were a good writer, she'd want you to join the speech team. She was, like, always adamant, always trying to get kids onto the speech team. And, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I have no idea what speech even is. I don't understand it at all. But, like, for the entirety of my junior and senior year when I was in high school, my English teacher, like, I swear to God, it was like a weekly thing. It was like every Tuesday when they would do their speech meets. Every single time, she would come up. She would find me, right? Like, no matter where I was in the building, she would find me, like, on the dot 10 minutes before they had their speech meets for their practices or whatnot. She would come up to me and she would be like, hey, you should join speech. I think you'd be really good at it. Yada yada yada. And it's just like, Miss Jennifer, because that was her name, Jennifer. I'd go, Miss Jen, I appreciate the offer, but that's not, I don't think that's in my cards. No pun intended, of course. But, I think now, looking back, if I was the person I am now in high school, I probably would have said yes. I probably would have agreed, just to try it at least. Because, you never know, right? You don't know if you don't try. So, I probably would have given it a fair chance. Just to see if I liked it at all. I don't think that I would have. Even now, I don't know that I would have. But it's weird, right? Because it's like, again, acting. It comes completely naturally. Absolutely no fear whatsoever in there. But speech, nada. You couldn't get me to do it. So I just think it's weird how it works, right? It's just a weird thing that, weird thing that affects the brain. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, But that's just how it is, right? something, not necessarily that they're afraid of, right? Because I don't consider myself to be afraid of a lot. Like, there are things that I fear, right? A lot of them are more, esoteric, I guess. It's like, I'm not afraid of dying, but I'm afraid of, like, other people dying, I guess. If that makes any sense whatsoever, I don't know. But, I'm not necessarily afraid of death or heights or any of that stuff, but there are things that creep me out, right? Like, I think running into, like, a giant spider would be a little frightening, but I wouldn't exactly call it a fear. Because it's kind of impractical, right? I'm not gonna run into a giant 6-foot-tall spider anytime soon. I hope not, at least, but, like, if I was in that situation, if I had to encounter such a thing, I would be, I think rightfully so, a little freaked out. But maybe that's just me. I don't know about you. That's just the way I see it, at least. But I think, like, the big thing, I think, for me is just the future. Man, like, the future freaks me out. Because, scientifically, I don't think we have any actual way to prove that the future even exists. Like, the future is just kind of a concept. It's just kind of a, the future, right? Like, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. But it's like, tomorrow, it doesn't exist. It's not something that you can point to and be like, oh, there it is. Like, we don't have time travel. We don't have anything like that to just say, hey, here's the future, right? Like, get ready for it. It's just, I guess, kind of like a broad assumption that it's just there. It's just part of, who we are as individuals, is that we believe the future exists. And there's no real counter, right? And that kind of creeps me out. That, there's no proof, right? Like, for example, that this video will even make it online as I'm recording this right now. I have no idea if this will actually ever be uploaded. I can make the assumption that, if I log on to my youtube.com, if I log in and I go through the process, I type in my password, I log on to my studio, and I upload the video file, I can make the assumption that might, lead to a future outcome, but there's no way of actually proving it until it happens. But then the second it happens, it's the present. I don't know if that makes even a little bit of sense, right? But that's just the way I see it. It's like, the future is not real, but everything we do, right? Like, literally everything that we do as people relies on the idea that not only does the future exist, the future must always be there, right? Because, we operate under all these assumptions that everything, like, the stock market will always go up and whatnot and all this other things, and it's just, that creeps me out. That kind of stuff gets in my head and just, so that's the kind of thing that scares me, and I don't know how you prepare for that, right? Like, it just sort of rattles around in my head. It's like, oh, I gotta go to work tomorrow, I gotta do this and all that, and it's like, well, tomorrow is just a vague piece of God knows what. So that, like, even now as I'm thinking about it, it just kind of gets my head to start spinning a little bit. So I don't know if I've explained that at all well, right? I could just be spouting straight nonsense right now to you, but that I guess about does it. I was not able to complete the Solitaire, but that's all right. I think we've had a productive discussion here. I hope you may have learned a little bit, I enjoyed this conversation. You know, the one-sided conversation where I am speaking at you with no feedback whatsoever. But those are just my thoughts on how I'm feeling, and um, hopefully by this time next year I'll at least be doing something close to what I want to be doing. But we'll see. Thank you, as always, so very much for watching. I hope to speak with you all again soon, and